Welcome to Up Until Now, your next chapter. Today's episode is going to be about networking. So, I just recently wrote a course called The Ultimate Networking Playbook, where I talk about how to network effectively to gain influence and increase your revenue. And it's all about networking both online and in person events. So, I'm not here to talk about the course really, but I do want to talk about networking because it is something close to my heart and I want to help people grow their businesses. So let me ask you, have you ever walked into a room, an event or where you're networking and you thought, okay, I grabbed my drink and I look around the room and now what do I do next? Right. Or you don't know people or you're sizing it up. Like when I'm going to tell you about an event I recently went to. So I went to this event. I expected maybe 75 to 100 people would be there. And I always know people when I go to events. Well, I walked into this room full of 200 plus people, and I'm looking around the room and I don't know anybody. And so I I'm not a natural to just walk up to strangers. Really, I'm not. But I do size up a room pretty quickly. So I looked and I saw a lot of people were in these what's called a closed group where you have a circle, a closed circle of people talking very closely together. Very few people were open like in a U-shaped formation or by themselves. So it was a little bit uncomfortable to say the least. But I said to myself, I'm going to have a conversation with one new person today. And that was my mindset to have one conversation. So I look around the room and I did realize that there were actually two people out of this several hundred people that I actually knew. And I did say hello to them, but that wasn't what I was after. I was after one new conversation. So we all moved into this from this reception into the area where this speaker was going to be. And I practiced what I preach. So there was a gentleman that sat two seats away from me and I looked at him and said, do you know much about the speaker? I didn't want to say, what do you do? I don't lead with that. I was leading with more of, what brings you here today? Well, it was obvious we were all there to hear this speaker. So I asked him, what was it about the speaker? And he shared with me his story of why he was there. It had to do with AI, and his son was in AI. And so he wanted to learn more about what his son was doing. And the conversation truly didn't go anywhere, which is fine. And I did make that one connection. But then I looked at the woman who was sitting right next to me, and we had a wonderful conversation. She told me she was there with a group of girlfriends. They were in a book club, and that book club really wasn't about reading the book, it was more about the socialization. So we had a really nice conversation. So my question is, was it a win or was it a failure? This event was a win because I didn't make one connection, I made two. So I wasn't there to sell, wasn't there to do any of that. I just wanted to have a conversation. And that's what we did. So I always say it's a win when you can have a conversation with someone, you can learn something new about someone, or you can offer something of value, of business, business advice or whatever it is. It's not there about selling to people. So I like to ask, what brought you here today? That's my go-to. Or when I'll go to an event and they tell me, oh, I'm in insurance or whatever they're into, I like to take it a step further. So I was at an event recently, a different event, and I knew most of the people there, but there were a few people that I didn't know. And so I went very confidently up to the strangers and I did ask, what do you do? And then after they said that, I paused and then I asked, well, that's really interesting. What made you go into that field? And they would tell me. In fact, one was rather interesting. She was in a dumpster business, the big old dumpsters that they bring to construction sites. So we had a really wonderful conversation about how she got into that. You'll never believe how she got into that industry. She went into Chat GPT and she chatted. She asked it, what were some good businesses to get into that were um, good for her. And this was after COVID. So that was one of three things that it recommended to her that would be a good business. And so that's what she did. She got into that. So again, I got her a card. exchanged cards with her, and we went from that. So it was all about me asking about the other person, not saying, oh, well, now let me tell you what I do. I didn't do any of that, but I follow up. And we'll talk about that at another time. So I definitely say follow up. When you go to networking events, you'll see that there's usually two kinds of people. There's the farmer and there's the hunter. And I can also relate to this online. So let me give you an example. So the farmer's the person who's going to be planting the seeds. That's the best way for me is you plant seeds. It's like you meet them, you maybe have coffee with them, meet them with a group, meet them one-on-one, and you nurture that relationships. You're planting the seeds and they'll eventually pop up. Then there's the other one. There's the hunter, and they're there. They're at that event and they're hunting for a sale, and they are there to sell. And that's what they are. They're very salesy, and they're not pleasant to be around either. It reminds me online. Anybody here on LinkedIn? So I'm in LinkedIn, and I'll often get people that want to connect with me, and I'm pretty open to it on LinkedIn. I check them out a little bit and see what they're all about. And if I think it's a good fit for me to be with them on LinkedIn, I'll say yes, approve. But what I don't appreciate and what I see a lot is as soon as you approve it, the next thing you know, you're getting massive DMs, you're getting a massive email from them trying to be very salesy, pushing their product on you. How about get to know me a little bit more than what you see in my profile on LinkedIn? Get to know me a little bit. So it's which one are you? Are you the farmer or are you the hunter? It's like, I hope you're telling me you're a farmer, you're planting the seeds. So what else can you do? You know, when we go to these events, we're out there to network and you meet people. And I mentioned about following up, and you really do have to follow up. If you don't follow up, you've just wasted your entire time because it goes nowhere. I had a friend over at my house, and we were working on a project together. And when she was done, I saw her picking up the phone, and she was making lunch dates with people that she's met. Great follow ups. Now, if you don't want to meet with just one person one on one because you're uncomfortable, invite four or five of them to get together at the same time because chances are there's going to be one or two who drop out anyway. But that way you get to know them. You're not uncomfortable because you're with a group in a group setting. Just say, hey, I have a few people I'm getting together with on Thursday for lunch at such and such a place. Would you like to join us? We'd love to have you. That type of thing. Boy, does it feel good. So another thing that I hear all the time is, well, how do you get to know people when you don't know anybody? And how do you stand out? Those are two questions I get. So let's talk about how you stand out. Here's what I do. So I had been in the same neighborhood for 30 plus years when I decided to move to an entirely new community where I knew nobody, and I do mean nobody. But I had a little puppy. And I said, I'm going to socialize the dog and socialize me. And we would go to the dog park every day. And one by one, I started meeting some different ladies who would bring their dog. And after a while, I mean, the funny thing is, I learned the dogs' names before I learned the people's names. But we all became very good friends. And we started meeting together for lunches and sometimes for dinners. And we'd go to one another's homes. Sometimes we would celebrate birthdays at a restaurant and such. So we got to know one another. What does that do? Well, let me tell you, when they know that someone wants to sell their house, I'm a realtor. They refer them to me. I'm top of mind to them. Now, how did they know I was a realtor? Did they say, what do you do? No. Here's how they all knew I was a realtor. What I did was I would go to the dog park wearing a t-shirt, and my t-shirts had something to do with real estate. One of them that I wore a lot was called, it said, real estate is my hustle. Okay. They knew I was a realtor, and so did everybody else. Another one said, I'm all out of listings. I need yours, or something along those lines. And I became known as the realtor, the go-to realtor in that dog park. And I would get questions all the time. I picked up clients that way at the dog park. You can go to where else can you go? You could go to your church. You could go to a PTA. It doesn't really matter. Go to the grocery store, but you could be wearing the t-shirt that says exactly what it is that you do without quite saying it. Mine didn't say I'm a realtor, but it did say things that would indicate that I am a realtor and I can sell your house. So that's one of the things that I like to do without a subliminal messaging, I guess you would call that. Another thing is, well, how can you stand out? There's everybody knows a realtor or 10, and I'm not sure what industry you're in, but it could be the same thing. So you want to stand out. And there's so many ways you can stand out. Branding covers more than just your logo and your website. It can go to what you wear. It can go to words you say. It could be, I knew a florist and hers was always where business is blooming. And we all knew that. And so whenever she'd introduce herself, she would say, I'm Mary and I have Mary's florist where business is. And everybody would just automatically say blooming. I mean, it was like magic. So your words can be part of your brand. There are other women that I know. These are two. This is a woman. I always know when she's walking the room. She could walk in backwards and I know what was her because she wears one of three colors and that's all she wears every single time when she's out in public. That's her brand. That's okay. That's her brand. You could wear. I know one of them. Her brand is she wears two different earrings. And they're awesome. They're cool, but they're always two different ones. Now, it used to be people would stand out by wearing these really big glasses and all these different bright, bold colors, but that's kind of mainstream now. So I don't think you might stand out, but not quite as much as you used to. So what else can you do to stand out when you're out there networking and you want to meet people? Well, here's another really good one. If you're going to hear a speaker, what I like to do is suggest that you research the speaker, do some research on them, find out what they're about and what they're going to be talking about, and create three questions that you can ask them. Three. Why not just one? Because somebody could be asking that one question and they were before you, and now you got nothing. So create three questions that you can ask that speaker, and you're prepared. So now you stand up because you're called on and you ask your question. Well, now you've got the room's attention, right? And the speaker's attention. So now that you've asked your important question, you can sit down and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Magic. What's going to happen is after that meeting, the attendees will come up to you and they're going to want to know you because you stood out. You were important. And they're going to come up to you and want to know more about you and what you do and all those kinds of things. And I'm always reminding you, lead with value, find out what they do and see what you can do to help them before you engage in what they can do for you. So those are some networking tips that I like to recommend. A lot of people go to trade shows. So what can you do at a trade show? Well, I'm going to give you an example of something that happened for me. It was for me. So I went to a trade show years ago, and at the trade show was a real estate coach. And she was interesting, and I connected with her. So I decided I was going to hire her. I hired this real estate coach who then introduced me to a graphic designer who I'm in Florida. She lived in Washington State. She introduced me to her via internet, and I used her services for probably 15 years. I never met her, and I bet you I didn't even have 6 phone calls with her. It was all done over the internet, everything. So I used her for 16 years. So that was networking. What else did I do? Is I recommended this one graphic designer to several other business associates of mine who used her services for many years as well. Why don't I use her today is because she decided to retire. Bummer. Replacing her was almost impossible. So these are things you can do for networking. I don't want you to dread networking. I want you to enjoy it and know that there's a right way and a wrong way. And as long as you lead with value, offering to help others first, you can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong. But then again, don't forget, you have to follow up. You can't meet somebody today and think you're going to start doing business with them tomorrow. You have to do the follow up. So that's some networking. If you want to learn more about how to network really well, then I am going to mention my course again. It's called The Ultimate Networking Playbook. If you want more information on how you can get that, I will share that information with you. Just contact me at Zelda at gozelda.com.